Hello and welcome to Background Briefing, available 24/7 at backgroundbriefing.org. I'm Ian Masters, and today we'll examine a number of stories and issues in the news. We'll begin with the war in the Middle East expanding as jitters rattle Wall Street and the global markets, with Trump announcing today that it's too late to talk to Iran's leaders, adding that, quote, most of the people we had in mind are dead. Joining us to discuss how Trump is torn between wanting to avoid another endless war while needing to keep the war going to justify invoking the Insurrection Act to rig the midterm elections is Sidney Blumenthal, the former assistant and senior advisor to President Bill Clinton and senior advisor to Hillary Clinton. He has been a national staff reporter for The Washington Post, Washington editor and staff writer for The New Yorker, and his books include the bestsellers The Clinton Wars, The Rise of the Counter-Establishment, and The Permanent Campaign. His latest book is All the Powers on Earth, The Political Life of Abraham Lincoln, 1856 to 1860, and his latest article at The Guardian we will discuss is Trump has cornered himself with his war in Iran. Then we'll look into Trump's absurdly cynical call for Iranians to take over their government, inviting them on a suicide mission to take to the streets after thousands were recently gunned down by the same government, now more fanatical than ever. Joining us is Sina Toossi, a senior non-resident fellow at the Center for International Policy. He writes on U.S.-Iran relations, Iranian politics and society, and nuclear proliferation, and he has an article at The Nation we will discuss, The Iranian Voices America Isn't Hearing. Then finally we'll speak with Bruce Schneier, who is an internationally renowned security technologist and the New York Times bestselling author of 14 books, including A Hacker's Mind. He is a lecturer at the Harvard Kennedy School, a board member of the Electronic Frontier Foundation, and chief of security architecture at Inrupt Inc. His latest book, co-authored with Nathan Sanders, is Rewiring Democracy, How AI Will Transform Our Politics, Government, and Citizenship. And he also has an article with Nathan Sanders at The Guardian we will discuss. Don't bet that the Pentagon or Anthropic is acting in the public interest. And before we begin at the start of this new year, which will culminate in the fateful midterm elections in November, polls already indicate MAGA Republicans will lose the House and possibly the Senate. But we're up against a Trump-Miller presidency already drunk with power, and they will do anything to stay in power, having already demonstrated their contempt for the United States Constitution with Trump's January 6, 2001 coup attempt. They see over half of the country as their enemy and have a private army of loyal thugs ready to round up critics of the regime they label as communist lunatics. As Trump cowers the media and his cronies buy up the mainstream press, Background Briefing will continue to expose this malevolent regime's fascistic machinations, providing a daily insight into the news as a massive coalition of people power is mobilized to bring about an end to this nightmare and usher in a new era of reform not seen since Nixon departed the presidency in disgrace. To help save America's 250-year-old democracy, we need all hands on deck, and you can make a tax-deductible donation to help us do our part at backgroundbriefing.org/donate or at publictruthmedia.org. And thank you. And joining us now, Sidney Blumenthal, the former assistant and senior advisor to President Bill Clinton and senior advisor to Hillary Clinton. He's been a national staff reporter for The Washington Post, Washington editor and staff writer for The New Yorker, and his books include the bestsellers The Clinton Wars, The Rise of the Counter-Establishment, and The Permanent Campaign, and his latest book is All the Powers on Earth, The Political Life of Abraham Lincoln, 1856 to 1860, and his latest article at The Guardian is Trump has cornered himself with his war in Iran. Welcome to Background Briefing, Sidney Blumenthal.
Glad to be here, Ian.
Well, thanks for joining us. And on yesterday's program, I spoke with Robert Pape, who used to teach the United States Air Force bomber pilots, and he's written about the smart bomb escalation trap, which appears to have sucked us into this war underway in Iran. And since air power provides gratification without commitment, we're, essentially in this trap because it causes the conditions you want to avoid by passing the initiative to the enemy to escalate, backfiring as tactical success does not translate into strategic control. Instead, it stimulates nationalism and resolve, or at best, chaos. So that's the most cogent explanation for what is happening to this war, which is absolutely damning and incredibly depressing. Is there any possibility, Sydney, that Trump could pull this off, or are we to accept the opinions of people like Robert Pape?
Well, just on the point that Robert Pape of the University of Chicago raises, his point goes back to the U.S. Strategic Bombing Survey of 1944 that concluded that bombing alone can't achieve fundamental military objectives, that it requires boots on the ground. And that's a well-known insight. And Trump is relying entirely on air power here. I've written an article in The Guardian that says that Trump has trapped himself in his war by declaring that his intention is regime change. He is wobbly on that now, back and forth. He says he wants to talk to people in Iran. He doesn't know who they are. He says he's killed the people he would have talked to. He says maybe it's regime change as his end game, but he's declared already it's regime change. So that sticks, and that seems unlikely. And he's entered into, you know, classically what von Clausewitz called the fog of war. And he has no idea. And whatever he and his administration spokespeople are voicing, they are simply describing the fog.
Well, we're learning, though, that the Iranians leaders, or what's left of them, that got together to elect a new supreme leader, they were just bombed by Israel. And Israel apparently doesn't want any successor, or at least they want to be able to keep, knocking off the leadership. So that is not particularly encouraging. But the point that you make in your article there, Sydney, it goes beyond the catastrophe at the moment in the Middle East to suggest that the trap that Trump has put himself in is that he wants a long war in order to be able to interfere with the midterm elections and use the extra powers of being at war, presumably to grab the ballots or do whatever he can do under a state of emergency.
Yeah, well, that's his conundrum, his quandary. He needs a swift victory in Iran to avoid a quagmire, but he also needs a long war in order to be able to assert emergency powers over the electoral process. He's declared he wants to nationalize the election. That's unconstitutional. It's in the Constitution that the states run the election. He wants to override that unilaterally. Though he has stated in the past he wants to invoke the Insurrection Act. He wants to provoke people into somehow into acts of violence. And he needs a long war to assert emergency authority. If he had a long war, he'd be in a quagmire. So he has trapped himself. He is in a vice.
So reports that there is a plan, when Trump said yesterday that it could go on for 4 to 5 weeks and didn't rule out boots on the ground, my understanding is that there is a plan, I don't know how serious it is, for the 30,000 Marines to occupy the oil fields, and that is a sort of similar to what he's done in Venezuela, where he's kept the same crooks in place, knocked off the top guy, and made a deal on the oil. Do you think that's in the cards?
He's talked about this. He's clearly influenced by what happened in Venezuela, which, by the way, still hasn't completely played out. He captured Nicolas Maduro, the president of Venezuela, in a lightning raid and essentially decapitated the government. However, the regime is in place, and the vice president, who was fully complicit in everything that happened before, came into power and served as somebody willing to do business with Trump, so long as the regime stayed in place. But he's killed too many people through his assassinations now in Iran. Um, he can't find the right people to negotiate with. But there can be no doubt that what if he does have an end game in the way he thinks, it is that he will somehow gain control of the oil of Iran, which is enormous. He will have a compliant regime, a pliant surrogate there, and he will be able to then divvy up the prizes, the contracts, the oil fields to his cronies and to people who will then owe him that favor. So he will be replacing the existing kleptocracy with his own. Um, that uh, that
Right.
doesn't seem like it's going to work out.
Right, from a clerical kleptocracy to a Trump family kleptocracy. But I think that at the heart of the problem, surely, Sydney, is that what we're talking about here is magical thinking on the part of Trump and this kakistocracy of a cabinet, of this clown car cabinet that he has. We're just learning, for example, that Kash Patel shut down the FBI unit that was to deal with counterterrorism, and now there's a threat of Iranian retaliation through terrorism, which is a part of their MO. So across the board, you have magical thinking, but everything about Trump is about magical thinking, isn't it? He was a real estate guy who just sells stuff based upon magical thinking. His whole world is a magical world that he's on top of which, even though he was a multiple bankruptcies, a total fraud in many ways, and has always been actually a fraud. But he's created this kind of magical world. And unfortunately, on two occasions, the American people gave him the most powerful position in the world, which of course reinforces the fact that his magical thinking has proven true.
Well, I don't know how magical it is. The magic runs out pretty fast, and it's reversed on him right now because everything that he used to do, as he thinks, with the touch of King Midas, does not turn to gold, turns to its opposite, to ashes. He's the most unpopular president of modern times. And he's using his war clearly as a way to try and raise his popularity going into the midterms and to use it in the midterms as an instrument against the Democrats, who he's conflated with the Iranians in his State of the Union as his dual enemies, the enemies without and the enemies within. He, of course, went bankrupt in private business and has really been turned flush only by his second coming into the presidency and created his vast kleptocracy of self-enrichment. Um, and now, through his militarism, he's engaged in the most consequential act right now of his second administration, and that is a very uncertain war.
Well, just yesterday, while talking about the war that he's plunged the US into, he segued into praising these gold curtains and saying how he's chosen the drapes for his ballroom. So this is beyond belief. And he also had his wife at the United Nations representing the children of the world while children are being killed and bombed. And it looked like the US killed a bunch of schoolgirls in south of Iran, bombing a school that was right next door to an IRGC barrack. So this clown car tragedy that we're experiencing now has reached a point where I cannot believe that anybody supports this guy. And the polls indicate that very few do. But I'm reminded, Sydney, that after Nixon left the presidency in disgrace, still 30% of the country supported him. So is that a reality here in this country, that no matter how much evidence you provide that you have a disastrous president on your hands, there's a constituency that simply is impervious to facts?
Well, Trump can't um, articulate a rationale for what he's doing, and his administration people are going out. Each one of them offers a different rationale. Uh, Secretary of State Marco Rubio went out and said, "Well, we had to do it because Israel was going to be attacked, and we would be attacked, and then so we were preventing a preemptive attack." And this is a complicated scenario that has only put the blame on Israel. And then others have come out with different explanations of what's going on. My favorite was the MAGA Senator Wayne Mullen,
Mm-hmm.
who said, "This is not a war." So, all right. But, just step back for a minute and think about how we got into this, because that's very helpful in thinking about where we are. You have to know how you got here. So he negotiated in bad faith, Trump. Oman's foreign minister was the go-between between Iran and Trump's pseudo diplomats, Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner, who are really commercial agents for Trump. And he said there was significant progress. Diplomacy takes a long time. Trump was not interested in a long time. So he had also thrown overboard in his first administration, as you recall, the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action signed in 2015 by Iran, the US, and five other countries, which says in its preamble that Iran will not develop a nuclear weapon. And he threw that out. And Wendy Sherman, who was the chief negotiator of that agreement, a U.S. diplomat, said if Donald Trump had not withdrawn, we wouldn't be here. So that's the predicate for what happens. And so then he's trying to negotiate some sort of version of what he's already trashed. Then he claims that there are imminent Iranian threats. But then the Pentagon briefs congressional staffers, as it's widely reported, after the bombing begins, that there are no imminent threats. There were no imminent threats from Iran. And then Rubio comes out and says, well, it involved Israel, and Israel did that. So, and then the New York Times today says that it's Netanyahu who developed the whole plan and prodded Trump. So, where are we here? Where's the WMD again? There's no intelligence for an imminent threat, and yet this is still going on. And there's no rationale. They're really in search of a rationale for what they're doing, attempting to accomplish it solely by air power for his stated objective of regime change, which seems highly unlikely that he will ever achieve.
Well, just in closing, Sidney, you point out in your article that 3 days before Trump began his attack, the director of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Vice Admiral Fred Karcher, was summarily dismissed after serving for only 3 months, and the Pentagon offered no reason for his removal. There is no national security process in this White House. There's only this erratic dictator, and he clearly does not want to listen to the truth, both from the Vice Admiral Fred Karcher and from the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs, General Dan Kane.
Yeah. So the Joint Chiefs raised the problems that would occur if there were an attack. And that's their job. They're supposed to make hard cases. They're still acting as professionals, and the director of the Joint Chiefs was summarily dismissed as a result. He was the human sacrifice here for attempting to act in a professional way. So, what Trump has done here, some people say it's neoconservatism, but there is no real philosophy behind this. This is just militarism, pure and simple. It's like old-fashioned militarism. And Trump, after he was stopped on his emergency tariffs by the Supreme Court, which were declared unconstitutional, where he could declare tariffs on any country whenever he wanted on a fantasy basis of an emergency, has now moved in his inhibition into military means and what he was doing on tariffs. And he's just using the army, however, and the air and the armed forces, however he wants. The result is politically that it's not well supported by the public. It was not supported beforehand. He did not prepare public opinion. He did not give a rationale. And according to the only major poll so far, a Reuters poll, only 27% of the American people now support this. And they are still in search of a reason for this, to an explanation. He split his base. And you've got MAGA now uh, seriously divided. You've got Marjorie Taylor Greene, the former representative who Trump called a traitor over the Epstein files, because she wanted them released, and she quit the Congress in a rage. Um, has is vehemently um, speaking out day by day against Trump's actions, and says, we voted for America first. Of course, Trump came to power promising no forever wars, that make America great again. MAGA meant that there would be no foreign wars. That's how he defeated Jeb Bush in the Republican primaries originally in 2016. And he accused Hillary Clinton of being for regime change. He has spoken often against that. But now he's in pursuit of that. And he's locked himself into it. And uh, he has split his base, and he's cracked it, and he's still being chased by all of his political problems and his ghosts, including Jeffrey Epstein. And Operation Epic Fury, in some regards, is Operation Epstein Fury.
Well, Sidney Blumenthal, I thank you very much for joining us here today.
Thank you, Ian.
And again, I've been speaking with Sidney Blumenthal, who's the former assistant and senior advisor to President Bill Clinton and senior advisor to Hillary Clinton. He's been a national staff reporter for the Washington Post, Washington editor and staff writer for the New Yorker, and his books include the bestsellers The Clinton Wars, The Rise of the Counter-Establishment, and The Permanent Campaign. And his latest book is All the Powers on Earth, The Political Life of Abraham Lincoln, 1856 to 1860. And his latest article, The Guardian, is Trump has cornered himself with his war in Iran. We're going to take a brief station break, back looking into Trump's absurdly cynical call for Iranians to take over their government, inviting them on a suicide mission to take to the streets after thousands were recently gunned down by that same government, now more fanatical than ever.
Since it cost a lot to win and even more to lose, you and me bound to spend some time wondering what to choose. Goes to show you don't ever know. Watch each card you play and play it slow. Wait until that deal come round. Don't you let that deal go down. No, no.
Welcome back. I'm Ian Masters, and this is Background Briefing, available 24/7 at backgroundbriefing.org. And joining us now is Sina Toossi, who is a senior non-resident fellow at the Center for International Policy. He writes on U.S.-Iran relations, Iranian politics and society, and nuclear non-proliferation. And he has an article at The Nation, The Iranian Voices America Isn't Hearing. Welcome to Background Briefing, Sina Toossi.
Hi, Ian. Thank you for having me.
So thanks for joining us, Sina. And the voices that Trump's not hearing are the voices that this regime tried to extinguish. Trump just recently said 32,000 Iranians were recently murdered by this vicious clerical regime. I don't know how accurate that figure is, He's also told them to hunker down, stay inside. Their bombs are going to be dropping. I believe they're targeting police stations, and so there's some collateral damage, obviously, where people live next door to these places that are being targeted. But the long and the short of it is, Sina, is this to say that there is nobody left to talk to after the rubble clears and the smoke clears? And I don't know when this thing's going to end, but who's going to be left standing?
Yes, yeah, that doesn't seem to be the case at all, that there will be no one left to talk to from this regime, which, Trump, among the many justifications they have presented for this war and his kind of topsy-turvy rhetoric since Saturday, his initial one was this very much this regime change rhetoric that Iranian people rise up. This is your moment. And then, they took out the Supreme Leader Ayatollah Khamenei in that opening blow on Saturday. And since then, Trump has been all over the place. And now he just actually gave a press conference right now saying that they're trying to talk with people from within the country, within the regime. I mean, the thing about the Iranian government, the Islamic Republic, is that it wasn't like a one-man dictatorship or a even something like Venezuela that was, there is a second person there who was willing to make a deal and take the rest of the system with her, like Rodriguez in Venezuela. And Iran, the Islamic Republic, is a much more entrenched, multi-layered system, a political system, has many parallel structures. It has an elected parliament. It has, this assembly of experts that is now trying to elect the next supreme leader, a president, multiple military institutions, many other political and religious institutions. And, it does have a social base ultimately, whether we like it or not. I don't think it's the majority of the Iranian society, certainly not. It's been a very repressive state. It's ever since the 1979 revolution that brought it to power. I would argue that its social base has shrunk and shrunk since then, especially in the deteriorating economic conditions of the past 10 years. And we've seen, more unrest, more protests. But I think at the end of the day, the idea that, wide swaths of Iranian society welcome U.S. intervention in their country and are willing to then risk their own lives to bring about kind of some U.S. installed ruler, that's also fantastical. And we have not seen that happening in these past couple days.
Well, there are reports, though, that the Israelis bombed the meeting that was taking place amongst the leadership that's left in order to choose a new supreme leader. Now, whether they killed more people or they blew up the counting of the ballots, I don't know what the bomb damage assessments are. Obviously, nobody does at this point, except perhaps the Israelis. The long and the short of it is you're caught between the possibility that the Israeli strategy is to keep killing the leadership that they don't like. On the other hand, you got Trump telling the Iranian people, this government is yours for the taking, which means he's encouraging them to take to the streets again after they were shot down last time. So the Iranian people that oppose this regime are not suicidal, surely. They don't want to go out on Trump's initiative to get shot.
Exactly. And that was exactly my point. I mean, you've seen that since, I mean, undoubtedly, many Iranians, millions of Iranians are happy that Khamenei is gone. For them, he was a dictator who oppressed, was very oppressive and repressive. But, at the same time, this, Khamenei, the way he died, I mean, by the accounts that I've seen so far, he was actually not in hiding, even though they knew this war was coming. He was in his above ground residence, apparently with his family, and where they were killed. And so this has a lot of significance for the ideology of the government and also the religious beliefs in Shia Islam, where these ideas of martyrdom, or the Shia imams or saints who were martyred. So my point in saying this is that this has galvanized the base of the regime and radicalized them. And for now, they are the ones who have mobilized in the streets. So all the footage and news out of Iran and Tehran and other cities, for now, it's the regime supporters who have mobilized in large numbers. But for the many Iranians who are opposed to the government, who have longed to see it go, and who are even celebrating the death of Khamenei to your point, to take to the streets, in this context of bombs raining down, this kind of theocratic government and repressive government being emboldened, being radicalized, having its supporters on the streets, that is suicidal. They're not really being given an option. And the government, yeah. So there was a report today that a building that supposedly some of the members of the Assembly of Experts, which are charged with, it's a clerical body that meets like every several years actually. And so a meeting was apparently hit. It's unclear if any of the members were killed because, in Iranian media, they've been saying that, they were going to do the votes electronically, that they're in hiding. So I don't know. Regardless, the Israelis are trying to take out as many people as possible. But, there is a leadership council right now comprised of the President Pezeshkian, this cleric from the Assembly of Experts, and the judiciary chief. You also have, the parliamentary chief is still there. So it's just, this war, in my opinion, is really going sideways. This is not the way that Trump expected it. I think he was sold an idea that the regime is a paper tiger, that it could easily fall apart. He didn't really listen to his own intelligence and military assessments by all accounts. Like last week, we had all these reports from various outlets saying that, the military and the Pentagon was concerned about, the war and how it would go, and that the US lacked a lot of these interceptor missiles. And right now we're seeing that Iran is going very high on the escalation ladder immediately. It's closed the Strait of Hormuz. It's hitting all these critical infrastructure in the neighboring countries. It's hitting Israel hard. It's even hit, British base in Cyprus. So this is just becoming a quagmire, and it's a quagmire of Trump's making, and it's not going to be able to end it, I think, in a way that's not going to look bad for Trump, but he'll probably try to twist it however he can.
So in terms of a new supreme leader, what do you know about Ayatollah Khamenei's grandson? I presume he's in hiding, right?
So it is not a hereditary system. So basically, there's a formal process that's laid out in this post 1979 Constitution of the Islamic Republic. There's this body of, I believe it's like 80 or something clerics that elects the next supreme leader. And so that process is ongoing. They've had this committee, this council, this leadership council that they've created in the interim. And the candidates are, the candidates that are widely speculated about are, there's this guy, Ayatollah Arafi, who's now part of that three-person committee. He himself is considered a contender. Actually, two of the grandsons of the original 1979 leader, Ayatollah Khomeini. So he's got two grandsons that are kind of political figures in Iran. They are considered contenders. In the past, it has been speculated that Khamenei's son, Mojtaba Khamenei, is a contender, but there's not really a lot of evidence behind that, and it's unclear if he's alive or, to what extent he might actually be a contender. But he's not really talked about within the system or in these deliberations that are going on. But it's going to be someone, yeah. I mean, if they elect the next supreme leader or if they keep it a council for some time longer, that's a possibility. But it seems like on the short list, it's one of these grandchildren of Khomeini, the 1979 leader, or another cleric from one of these bodies, like this Assembly of Experts.
But Mojtaba, the son of the recently martyred or murdered, whatever you want to describe it, Khamenei's son, Mojtaba, is widely despised. He owns a bank. He's a part of the clerical kleptocracy. And I think he lost his wife and maybe his grandkid, who were killed along with Khamenei's daughter. So I don't know what his fate is, and I guess you don't either. But
yeah, so I'm not sure about Mujtaba, or if he was the son and it was his family that was there, or if it was some other family. But it seems like Khamenei was indeed with some family members, which again, I think is part of it's plausible that it was somewhat intentional, because again, for the regime's ideology and in Shia Islam, this martyrdom, this idea of martyrdom, and then there was this famous Shia saint Imam Hussein who died with his family. So I think they're trying to emulate that. That should be taken seriously, in my opinion.
Right. So if Mujtaba escaped the martyrdom, he's often referred to as a kind of Rasputin figure, and he's tied to the IRGC. Is the IRGC basically what's going to be left Because my sense is that Trump might try to make a deal that along the lines of what he did with Venezuela, which is you knock off the top guy, then you keep all of the crooks and underlings in power, including the torturer Cabello, who's still in charge of the Ministry of Interior. And so that would indicate to me that maybe he's going to try and reach out to the IRGC and said, you guys can run the show, and try and make some kind of oil deal with them. What do you think?
That seems very plausible to me. And that's like the worst case scenario, really, for all the millions of Iranians who wanted fundamental political change, who wanted to move on from this repressive regime. Again, the Mujtaba Khamenei stuff, I think, is kind of over exaggerated, like him, the person, and his influence. I mean, he's definitely a nefarious character who's been a part of, the decision making under Khamenei's leadership. But as you say, the IRGC, the military economic infrastructure that it represents, it controls large parts of the economy, all the various other institutions. Again, the Islamic Republic is a deeply entrenched regime. So, Trump trying to, his quote unquote easy way out of this mess that he's really created as a failure of, diplomacy. I mean, we can get into it if you want, but, that would be an off ramp to just try to cut a deal with some other faction of the regime. But the key question there is there someone who can represent the government and the military that's fighting right now to end the war with a deal with Trump? And that is unclear to me. Right now, they're fighting, and I think the Iranian strategy, as stated by the Ali Larijani, the Secretary of the Supreme National Security Council, and other senior officials these days, is to continue this war and continue it for some months to really increase the costs for Trump and the global economy, like keeping the Strait of Hormuz closed for weeks or months longer, destabilizing global energy markets, having ramifications for the stock markets in the U.S. and elsewhere, to really gain more leverage for a favorable diplomatic settlement on their end. But I think that can easily go. I mean, wars are unpredictable, right? So that's what they might be planning for. The U.S. Trump is also talking about arming groups in Iran. There was an Axios report about arming Kurdish groups, which then raises the possibility of ethnic conflicts in Iran, separatist empowerment, and that could mobilize a lot more Iranians against that. So it's really, has all the makings of a quagmire, in my opinion.
So just in the last couple of minutes then, Sina, what about reports? Of course, Trump said yesterday that it could go on for 4 to 5 weeks, and he didn't rule out boots on the ground. There are reports that there's a plan to send the Marines, 30,000 Marines, into grab the oil fields. That seems, again, like Trump's magical thinking. I can't imagine that the Iranians would welcome the U.S. grabbing their main natural resource.
Yes, I mean, Trump has been all over the place. It's really hard to make sense of it. I mean, he also said again today that it could end in days. With boots on the ground, I think, one other element of this is just the political cost for the Trump administration and here at home. I mean, practically, I think every poll is showing that something like 60% of Americans oppose this war. And even in the MAGA base, the Trump's base, that many people are opposed to it. And you already see prominent kind of conservative personalities who are criticizing this war. I mean, you've already had like Tucker Carlson and Candace Owens, but I just saw Megyn Kelly yesterday. Matt Walsh is critical of this war. So I think, if he sends boots on the ground in an election year, in a midterm year, it can really become even more of a quagmire for him and really have a political cost for the Republicans in November in the midterm election. So that leads me to think, he's probably weighing all these options, but Trump is prone to bluffing as well. And he's probably, I mean, thus far, he's in his military engagements, he's tried to keep him short and decisive. This has not been short and decisive, or doesn't have the hallmarks of being short and decisive, but he can try to just wash his hands of it and backtrack and try to sell it as some victory. That's also a possibility.
Right, but just in closing, what they're saying now, both Trump and Secretary of State Marco Rubio, is that they haven't really used the big stick yet. They've killed the supreme leader and they've bombed the hell out of the place, but look out, something bigger is coming down the pike.
Well, that raises the question to me is like, what is the big stick then? Because they've already hit, major political figures. We said the supreme leader, they've hit major military sites, the nuclear sites were already hit. Trump said he hit the Navy. They're already
Well,
bombing a lot of
there's no
infrastructure.
navy.
Yeah. So, I
There
mean,
is no
yeah, and
Iranian
Iran
navy.
never had a navy. I mean, that's kind of just, he's trying to sell an achievement that's not an achievement. I mean, Iran's main military capabilities are its missiles and its drones that are underground, deeply buried. And the launchers, they're trying to hit the launchers. That's a game of hunting down these launchers. For now, Iran continues to fire these big volleys of missiles at Israel and elsewhere in the region that are creating a cost for those countries. But I'm also concerned about, would these people actually use like nuclear weapons or tactical nuclear weapons, especially with these kind of, and then we're entering a whole new world order if God forbid something like that happens, because then, Russia, China, all those calculuses change for Ukraine, elsewhere. So, but God knows.
Well, I thank you for joining us here today, Sina Toossi.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
And again, I've been speaking with Sina Toossi, who's a senior non-resident fellow at the Center for International Policy. He writes on the U.S.-Iran relations, Iranian politics and society, and nuclear proliferation. And he has an article at The Nation, The Iranian Voices America Isn't Hearing. We're going to take a brief station break, back speaking with an internationally renowned security technologist on his new book, Rewiring Democracy, How AI Will Transform Our Politics, Government, and Citizenship. Welcome back. I'm Ian Masters, and this is Background Briefing, available 24/7 at backgroundbriefing.org. And joining us now is Bruce Schneier, who is an internationally renowned security technologist and the New York Times bestselling author of 14 books, including A Hacker's Mind. He's a lecturer at the Harvard Kennedy School, a board member of the Electronic Frontier Foundation, and chief of security architecture at Inrupt Inc. His latest book, co-authored with Nathan Sanders, is Rewiring Democracy, How AI Will Transform Our Politics, Government, and Citizenship. And he also has an article with Nathan Sanders at The Guardian, Don't Bet That the Pentagon or Anthropic is Acting in the Public Interest. Welcome to Background Briefing, Bruce Schneier.
Thanks for having me.
Well, thanks for joining us. And let's talk about your article first and then get into the book. Obviously, it seems a little vindictive what both the Secretary of Defense has done in terms of not just cancelling Anthropic's contract with the Pentagon, but Trump went further by banning it from all government agencies and departments. Hegseth said that they were woke for having some guardrails on the use of AI, and Trump seems to have all wanted to destroy their market position. So how much have they been damaged by Trump's ban and essentially dissing them on Wall Street?
I think this is a lot of smoke and not a lot of fire at this point. So they've not been banned yet. There's talk. There are going to be lawsuits. It'll take 6 months to extricate Anthropic out of every place it is, and who knows what'll happen between now and then. Uh, this is a lot of posturing. It's a lot of bullying. I think actually Anthropic is doing well because it's positioning itself as the moral AI. I mean, I don't think it is, but that is the position, and that matters. So I don't know. I'm reading all these articles and just wondering if anybody will even remember this 3 months from now.
But what about reports that there were AI programs, I'm not sure whether Anthropic or some of the other competitors, doing Pentagon war games, and that 90+% of the time the AI model resorted to the use of nuclear weapons?
No. Is that more or less than humans doing the same games? I don't know. I would guess it's about the same. Again, it's a whole lot of talk. Yes, if you run simulations about nuclear weapons with AIs, they use nuclear weapons. Okay. Well, are we surprised? We're not giving AIs the launch code, so I don't know why this matters. But yeah, I mean, all of this is interesting. All of this is like, I guess, was news before we declared war on Iran. And I don't know. I don't see anything lasting here.
But as an educator, Bruce, is there a valid concern already because kids can use their iPhones? They don't have to add, multiply, reading and writing and arithmetic's out the window. Spell check means you don't have to learn how to spell. Is the advent of AI to education, would that mean that kids no longer need to think?
Probably not. I mean, I think since the Greek times, we've been complaining about kids these days. I think it was Aristotle who complained that reading, literacy, meant that people would no longer have to think. I think this is generational. Yes, it'll be different. Yes, we have to figure out education. I am teaching right now at University of Toronto, and yeah, the students are using AIs. And we have to figure out how to teach in a world of AIs, like we had to think about how to teach in a world of Wikipedia and pocket calculators and printing and television and all of those things. So yes, I mean, I think there are going to be big changes. I don't know what they are, but I'm not panicking.
Well, of all of the studies and reports on AI, I think most of them that I've seen have been pretty dystopian. And it seems to me that you're cautiously optimistic. Is that a way to
Yeah,
describe you?
I am, and I mean, I can send you equally high pile of utopian visions of AI. I think the truth is going to be somewhere in the middle. I see AI as a power enhancing technology. It enhances the power of the humans that use it. If the humans want to do good things, AI will help. If the humans want to do bad things, AI will help as well. So, I don't see it tipping the scales in one way in particular. I see it tipping the scales in both ways. And this really means we as society have to figure out, how to deal with powerful humans, humans that are powered with AI. Now, we've had a lot of trouble dealing with powerful humans powered by money. So, my guess in the near term, AI is going to be more dystopian than utopian because it's going to be used by the powerful to increase their power. But my hope is that with sort of like with everything else in our society, eventually we as a species figure it out. Maybe that's too optimistic, but I'm trying to be hopeful.
Well, given that we are at war, I know we've talked about
I know, right? When did that happen? Over the weekend.
exactly, and I know that we started out talking about the Pentagon, but the first piece of discussion about AI and the military, I recall, came from Vladimir Putin, who of course is at war with Ukraine, his war on Ukraine, and he said that whoever captures AI or captures the lead on AI will dominate the battlefield. Is that the case? And if
Yeah,
that,
I don't think so. I mean, what we're learning from the war in the Ukraine is that better tech doesn't necessarily mean domination. I think the U.S. has learned that again and again over the previous half century, that better tech isn't enough to dominate. Uh, I think we're seeing a whole lot of clever uses of the technology by all sides, right? Israel is using AI for targeting. And while we could talk about saying, look, we don't want AI used in war, we don't want killer robots. What history teaches us, like it or not, is that all technologies are used for war. Right? Before World War I, there was widespread agreement that we should never use airplanes in war because it'd be too devastating. The war starts, and within a year, everyone's using airplanes. So and it's not great, but it is really what we got. We humans use everything possible in war.
so, Bruce, now let's talk about rewiring democracy, how AI will transform our politics, government, and citizenship, your new book. And it basically says, for example, that AI will enhance a civil servant's ability to shape private sector behavior, automating either the enforcement or neglect of industry regulations. It will also explain how both lawyers and judges will leverage the speed of AI, upending how we think about law enforcement, litigation, and dispute resolution. So already that's an awful lot on the table.
It's a lot, and the book has a lot more. And because there's a lot going on. there's so much, how do I describe this? There's so much going on with AI right now, and it's going to affect every aspect of our lives. And in our book, we look about sort of all aspects of democracy. And we conclude that AI is going to affect them all, right? Some good, some bad.
Well, there's an AI gold rush going on, isn't there, from Wall
And it's
Street?
an AI gold rush or an AI bubble. Yes. The AI is sort of propping up the U.S. stock market. So I'm not convinced any of the companies that are around today are going to be the ones who are going to make all the money in AI. I think this is going to be kind of like the dot-com bubble in like the early 2000s, where the companies all went under, but the technology was still good, and eventually new companies emerged that could use it and use it well. So I don't know. I just see too much money being basically set on fire by these big tech companies, and I'm not sure I see a path of profitability right now. But the technology is real. The technology does amazing things, and we are going to figure out how. It might take a couple of decades, but I think we will.
So, if all this money's pouring in, I'm just trying to get a handle on where it's going to. We hear that they're going into data centers, which require a lot of electricity, etc. But beyond that, what is the value, and what will the winners bring to the table, short of the computing power that comes from these huge data systems?
They're going to bring to the table ways to use AI that actually does good. Right? AI in medicine, AI in the law, AI in accounting, AI, all these areas, right? AI are artificial thinkers, right, in some form. And they have value, but we need to figure out how to incorporate them in what we are doing. I don't know if you remember, this is like in the 80s when the computer revolution starts happening. It's like 2 decades, maybe 1 decade before the businesses saw any real uh, improvements in computerization. Computers hit the workplace and everyone's saying they don't make a difference. Well, it took a couple of decades to figure out how they make a difference. And my guess is something like that's going to happen here. That it's going to take a decade or two for systems, businesses to figure out how to incorporate AI in a way that's good, that's positive, and not negative.
So, what do we have on the market now? How would you rate negativity versus positivity? Because
Oh man, I don't know. That seems like an awful detailed thing to ask. Wait, well, I'm just hand waving here.
right. Well, but people say that Claude is better than than
You look at the
GPT.
leaderboards; they're all about the same. Some are they're better, but they're a little bit better. It is surprising how similar all of the big models are to each other.
So, is there then the possibility that AI will flourish and humans will atrophy?
There's the possibility of everything. There's a possibility that a comet will hit the Earth. I'm not worried about that. Of all the things you have to worry about, that is way down on my list. But is it possible? Lots of things are possible.
Well, a lot of the people that have written about your book and supported it, some of the people, for example, like Vint Cerf, who's one of the internet pioneers, says that while Schneier and Sanders are more optimistic than I am about the future of artificial intelligence and policy, you will be glad to have taken the time to read and understand their well articulated arguments.
It was
So
nice of him to say, as someone who disagreed with us.
I was going to say that is exactly why I read it. So, what are you trying to do with the book? Because
In the
obviously,
book, we're trying to look at possibilities that if we're to get ahead of AI, right, instead of AI being something that happens to us or something that big tech foists on us, we need to think about the possibilities and think about what we could do to steer AI towards more democratic outcomes. That's really what we're trying to do. We're trying to look at the democracy writ large, from politics to lawmaking to administration, judiciary to people, how this technology could affect different areas, and then what we could do now to try to make the outcome good, something that we as a democracy can be proud of. That's really the point.
But could we do this without guardrails? I mean, already, you have
I don't know.
we have a society where truth is a moving target to begin with.
But that's always been true. So guardrails, I mean, we have guardrails and everything. I went to lunch in a restaurant today. There are guardrails. We call them health and safety codes. Right? There are guardrails on my car. There are guardrails when I get an airplane. There are guardrails for pharmaceuticals. Yes, there'll be guardrails for AI, just like there are guardrails for everything else. It's no different. I mean, AI isn't a magical technology. It is a technology that can do good, can be taken advantage of. We need law to step in to figure out, what's legal and what's not, what's allowable, what isn't. I mean, law's doing a terrible job at that right now, especially in the United States, just because money and politics. So I kind of this is kind of another one of those, capitalism sucks problems. But, we can, in theory, fix this. This is not different or magically hard in some way. It's regular hard.
So I'm calling you from Los Angeles, and people in this town, in the movie business and television and music, etc., are very concerned that they're going to be replaced. And already,
But the Screen Actors Guild, but last year negotiated a really good contract. I mean, they used their power collectively to negotiate a surprisingly good contract to make that less likely.
well, anecdotally, I know a fashion photographer who says he's being put out of business because his clients can get artificial models, virtual models, and dress them any way they like. They don't need him anymore.
And that's going to happen. We could try to prevent that. It's likely a losing battle overall. But yes, this is going to be a technology that's going to cause a lot of job displacement. The open question that we don't know the answer to is, will this be like every other example of technology displacing jobs where new jobs appeared that now needed to be done? Or will this be different and result in widespread unemployment? And there's a reason people are talking about universal basic income now, because this might be different. I don't know. I mean, this is not something I research, but yes, this is something to be very concerned about.
Well, Bruce Schneier, thank you very much for joining us here today.
Thank you.
And again, I've been speaking with Bruce Schneier, who is an internationally renowned security technologist and the New York Times bestselling author of 14 books, including A Hacker's Mind. He's a lecturer at Harvard's Kennedy School and a board member of the Electronic Frontier Foundation and the chief of security architecture at Inrupt Inc. His latest book, co-authored with Nathan Sanders, is Rewiring Democracy: How AI Will Transform Our Politics, Government, and Citizenship. He also has an article with Nathan Sanders at The Guardian, Don't Bet That the Pentagon or Anthropic is Acting in the Public Interest. And this has been Background Briefing. I'm Ian Masters, and I'd like to thank producers Graham Fitzgibbon, Asher Price, and Sasha Linden-Cohen. If you missed any of today's program and would like to explore our vast archives, you can find us at backgroundbriefing.org, where we include extended interviews, searchable by topic, and have made it easier for you to sign up for daily email updates and provide links to resources, articles, and books discussed on the program. Also, you can find links there to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, and we highly encourage your ratings and reviews on these platforms. Find us on Twitter, Blue Sky, and Facebook at Ian Masters Media, and our new social media manager, Luke Susswood, is also posting highlights from the show on YouTube, TikTok, and Instagram at Ian Masters Media. So please do help us reach more listeners by sharing this program with friends, family, and colleagues. And to help sustain this program into the future and ensure it remains free to all, please take a moment to support us by going to backgroundbriefing.org/donate and/or at publictruthmedia.org, where your tax-deductible donations, large and small, keep us broadcasting. And I'll be back tomorrow with another Background Briefing at backgroundbriefing.org. Bye for now.
By 9:30.